Hey besties, Drew had some computer issues during our recording, and his audio this week doesn't sound the best. And to be blunt, I don't have the audio editing skills to make it sound much better. So, in the spirit of the show, the audio quality is the best we could do. I hope you still enjoy the episode. Thanks everyone.
Hey, so, during my travels this week, it looks like we had quite a bit of activity from the besties. We had a lot of stuff come in.
Lots of stuff.
I took a stab at an outline. Of course, this is not immutable, as we say in the computing profession. So this outline that I kind of created for the show this evening, it definitely doesn't have to stay there. So if you want to change this up.
No, I think it's good. I love the order, and yeah. So let's like Drew said, we got a ton of bestie feedback and suggestion for topics. So if you don't hear your suggestion, it doesn't mean we don't love you. It just means we'll get to you later, because we got a ton. So thank you to everybody who wrote in. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a lot of good stuff. A couple things real quick. A lot of the topics this week, with the exception of the stuff at the beginning, is going to be a lot of me, I think.
Okay.
So it's probably going to be a pretty Drew-focused episode. So Paul, please jump in.
I will.
If things don't if things don't work out.
Absolutely.
The other thing I want to say is I had somebody send me a private note.
Okay.
That asked me about kind of truthiness, and we'll get to this a little bit later when we talk about social media stuff.
Okay.
About the truthiness of the things we talk about, and I don't ever plan on lying to anybody on this podcast, but I will say that if you send in a topic and we don't talk about it, one of two things probably happen. One, we just haven't gotten to it yet, or it's a topic that if I know I talk about it, I will say truthy things that will probably get me in trouble. So
yes.
Yeah, so I generally have pulled a few punches on some topics that we've talked about, but by and large, I'm not trying to shy away from anything, intentionally or unintentionally, I should say. But I do feel like at least I need to be careful with some of the things that get brought up. So I don't know how you feel, Paul, but
yeah, I mean, I imagine we'll get to a point where not every topic suggested is appropriate for the show or something we feel comfortable talking about. So I think we'll just take them one at a time, and I'm
sure there may be times where either you or I suggest a topic that the other one isn't totally comfortable with, and
it's bound to happen.
It's bound to happen. It probably has already happened, to be fair. I'm sure I've done that already. But if feel free to dodge, right? Like just duck it. And I'm not gonna. I won't press, and I will tell you if I'm not comfortable talking about something. But okay, so with that out of the way, so we had a ton of listener feedback, which we love, so please don't hesitate to send in your things. So a lot of the topics that I picked for this show came from listener feedback, because there's one topic in general that I think now we've been asked by several people that we're going to get to a little bit later, but I thought we could kick things off. We got really good feedback from my dear friend and bestie, and now officially bestie of the show, Rob Sewell, from merry old England, by the way.
International.
Which I'll talk more about Rob a little bit later. But he sent in a bunch of really good questions, so we kind of cherry-picked a few here. So the first thing that Rob wanted to know was, what old tech do we really miss? So I'm gonna throw that one over to you, Paul. Okay. What's stuff that isn't around anymore that you miss?
So I'm not sure it's so much technologies that I miss. It may be more technologies that I feel extremely nostalgic for. I was thinking about this during the day, and one thought that came back to me over and over again. So when I was a child, I'm a man of a certain age, so technology, computers, gaming wasn't nearly as fancy as it is now. And kind of in the mid 80s, I can't remember if it was before the Game Boy or around the same time, this company called Tiger made a series of handheld LCD-based games. And when I say LCD, I mean like old school, like the way your not old, but like inexpensive calculators work, where there's just like liquid cells and they can either be lit up and display or not. I'm going to put some links in the show notes, but there were, I had maybe a half dozen or like 8 of these games, and there were a lot. Honestly, they were pretty crappy, but I loved them. I remember I would take a couple with me and play them in the car riding to my grandparents' house when I was forced to visit them. And yeah, I'm going to send you a link to what one of these looks like, Drew.
All right.
Yeah,
okay.
They were. There you go. That was probably one of my favorite ones. The Batman electronic LCD handheld game, and they were just very simple. They had a small little screen.
Oh, I remember these.
Yes.
Oh, these were wonderful.
Yes. There was no real point. It was just they usually had a very simple game loop. Yeah, neither one of the pictures have it actually on. A very simple game loop where the game just got progressively harder and faster. They had very simple controls, very basic sound. Actually, I believe, yes, I'm going to put a link to this in the show notes as well, is a lot of them have been kind of digitalized and are part of the Internet Archive for people to play.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So that's my first one, is Tiger Electronic LCD Games. I spent a lot of time as a child playing these things.
Yeah. No, those were popular like when I was in 3rd grade. There were a few kids that had them. I don't think I ever played the Batman one, or maybe I did, but I distinctly remember one that was it was almost like Atari's Pitfall, where like you were running through a jungle and jumping on alligators, and I do remember those. I never had one of those, but it's crazy to think about how we just used LCDs back then.
Yeah. I mean,
it was alarm clocks and handheld games.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, boy, those were wonderful. Those were really wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got a really good one for this.
Okay.
Technology that it's still technically around, but it's getting harder and harder to find. A manual transmission.
Wow. Yes.
So I know I've talked about my love for cars on this show before. But one thing to note is the last car I had before I had my Mercedes was an Audi S4. And that model year, and I forget which model year it is now. I want to say it was like a 2015, 2016, maybe. Had a 6-speed manual transmission. And I have owned manual transmissions. I'd say about 50% of the cars I've owned have been manual transmissions. I had an Acura that was a manual, a Honda Civic that was a manual, a Jetta that was a manual, and my Audi, which was a manual. When I had my Infinities, those were automatic, and my Mercedes is automatic now. And I wish manual transmissions were a thing. Now, I have been told that there are still a few holdouts out there for cars you can get a manual in. I don't know what they are off the top of my head, but when it comes time to buy my next car, I'm like 98% sure I'm going to get another Mercedes because I've really enjoyed owning this car. But when I compare, having a manual transmission will be pretty high up there. And I think I've read somewhere on the internet that the next generation of BMW M3s are going to have manual transmissions, just because I enjoy shifting gears. Even though I just drove like 1,200 miles over the past 3 days, I miss having a good manual transmission. So that would be the one that I think would be at the top of my list.
Yeah, I had a couple manual transmissions when I was younger as well. So I know how to drive stick. I wouldn't say that I enjoy it. Then again, I don't have quite the car obsession that other people have. But you know what? There is something about having a clutch. You do feel like you're part of the driving experience, not just, a passenger.
Yeah. And I wonder, car makers moving away from that. Time was that manual transmissions, I think people used to say, were more fuel efficient than automatic transmissions. I don't think that's the case at all anymore. And I think and I think that as we get more into like autonomous driving and things like that, I think that automatic transmissions are going to be required. Like, I don't know how you could do that with manual transmissions. Although, I mean, my cruise control would work with a manual transmission, right?
Right.
But as far as like quick acceleration and stopping and things like that, I don't know if you can program around that. I'm sure you probably could, but I'm speculating. I have no idea how autonomous vehicles work.
It also seems like a lot of the high performance, like really speed based cars are going to automatic because they could control everything and get, faster acceleration and
Yeah. So my car has the 9-speed. I don't know if it's dual clutch or not. It's a 9-speed. It's got the paddle shifters, and I mean that thing shifts in a blink of an eye. It's just faster than I ever could. As soon as I, whether it's doing it itself or I take control with the paddles, it shifts way faster than I ever could. And, it's power to the wheels faster. Like, I get it. But I do, especially because where I grew up, there were a lot of hills. And, like, when there was snow or things like that, like, it was just nice being able to put your car in neutral and kind of, like, use your brakes to kind of fill out a hill rather than it being in gear and pulling you. Like, that's kind of how I learned to drive, was on a manual transmission. So I bemoan the fact that you can't get them as much anymore. I still think they'll be around for at least a few more years. Like I said, I think there's some new cars coming out that'll have them, but I don't know if that'll be the case forever.
Yeah, I think my second car was a manual. My father tried to spend some time teaching me how to do it, and he was very short of patience. So after a couple 30-minute sessions, he pretty much just gave up. And then one day I had nothing. I had to get to work, and I had nothing but my manual transmission station wagon. So I left for work 45 minutes early, and it was rough. I stalled a bunch, but I made it. I made it home, and that was a lot of confidence after that. I felt pretty good. Yeah.
So I've got one other one that I'm nostalgic for, but I don't necessarily think I miss.
Okay.
So Paul, there was a moment in the 90s where document scanning was all the rage.
Oh.
Do you remember the handheld roller scanners?
Yeah, I do. Yes.
Yeah. So those were fun because you could scan your dog, or you could you could also add a letter to that word and scan other things. You could do, it was kind of fun because the idea was kind of deceptively simple. So what it was is it looked like almost like a lint roller with an infrared sensor in it, and you would place it on a document and you would hold down a button and you would drag it across a document rather than, today we're so used to flatbed scanners that you put a document on and it scans and you can take pages in and out. But there was a time where if you couldn't afford a flatbed scanner, you had these little rollers that you would put on the paper and you would kind of drag it across the paper. I think there's probably an entire generation of people that don't understand how those work, or that those were a thing. So I know that my grandfather had a Logitech one, and he had one of the first inkjet printers that I can recall. One of the old HP inkjet printers when they came out, and he also had one of those. But I just remember playing with that as a kid. So I don't know, it's kind of against the spirit of the question, but I'm definitely nostalgic for it, just because we just don't think that way anymore.
Yep. So I have one more as well, and again, this is more something I'm nostalgic for, and that is, I think we talked about this briefly in another episode, but that's MUDs, MUSHs, MOOs, those kinds of things. Yeah.
So I'm gonna get poked at, why isn't the doing their best BBS up yet?
Because life is hard and adulting is hard. That's why.
Because I'm busy. Yes. Busy. Okay.
Yep.
It's coming. I promise. I actually had it working. I had it working for a hot second. Then I'm like, I'm gonna put this in Kubernetes, and then so it's coming. Okay. Yep. Just be patient. I promise. When it happens, you all will know. You all be invited. Yeah. So don't be weird. Don't share bad stuff on it. Okay, that's not a conversation I want to have with the authorities. It's why you decided to put things on it that you shouldn't. Okay. Yeah.
For those people who don't know, MUDs, MUSHs, MOOs are all kind of the same thing. It was a multi-user, text-based. A lot of them were games. Some of them were social. And I spent a lot of time as a teenager on various. Mostly MOOs, which are more social based, but lots of MUDs as well. Sure. Break out the old Telnet client.
Yeah, those were good days. I really got into those. So when I was in high school and I guess middle school, my big thing was I would dial in. We couldn't afford Prodigy or AOL because of where we lived, because everything was a long distance call. But one town over from us, there was a local like computer shop that had a BBS, but you could only have 3 concurrent users at a time. They only had 3 lines.
Only 3?
Yeah,
Wow.
and they didn't do any kind of multiplexing or anything. It was just they had 3 phone lines with 3 dedicated 9600 baud modems that got better as time went on. You could connect to, and you could browse things. Yeah, and then I did that mostly from my grandfather's house because I would go over there and I would go spend the night at my grandfather's, I don't know, once or so a month probably, because he had a 14.4 kilobaud modem, whereas my old IBM 486 at the time only had a 2400 baud modem. So I could get on there and it was like life changing, right?
Right.
And I used to do that. And then when I got to college and I started to learn how Telnet and like things like SSH work, jumping on to the local school systems and playing some MUDs and MOOs and MUSHs and things. So that was kind of my experience with it. But things like NetHack on the local BBS, and there was another one. There was another one that was more like cyberpunk themed that I can't remember what it was called.
Oh, most of the MUDs I played were very either they were social or they were fantasy oriented. And just kind of looking around the internet, I guess like there's still a very vibrant, like dedicated community dedicated to these things.
Yeah. Absolutely, there is.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a kink. I'm sure that they're still out there. Maybe if you get time, drop some links in the docs, and we'll put some out there. So that's stuff that we're either nostalgic for or stuff we miss now. Any other ones you want to add to that list?
No, I think that's all I could think of.
Yeah. And then the next question is coming from a topic that we discussed, I think it was 1 or 2 episodes ago. So Bestie Gary Bardsley asked, hey, Paul, how do you pull off the separate family vacation thing? And before you answer, just know that I also subscribe to this. So my wife and I take separate vacations usually, and I'll kind of go into how that happened for me. But the question was mostly directed to you, so I'm going to let you take this one.
So persuaded is a strong word. Asked to not come is probably more realistic.
Okay.
So my wife and kids love the beach. They love the ocean. They go every year. I don't. I have a completely rational fear / distaste for water. And for me, the beach is just where like wet meets dirt. Like it's not a special place for me. It's hot. Sand gets everywhere. Like my arch nemesis is literally like 100 yards ahead of me. So I have gone on beach vacations with my family, but they would gladly would spend all day outside at the beach in the ocean. And for me, I'm good after 45 minutes. I want to be back in the hotel doing literally anything. So they kind of feel obligated that if I'm not at the beach, they shouldn't be at the beach. And so they would like kind of cut their beach early and spend time with me. And I didn't want them to necessarily feel like they had to do that. So I just kind of stopped going on their beach vacations. So I'm actually really bad about taking vacations. I don't do it as often as I should. But recently I did take a trip to LA with some friends to see a concert, and that was fun. And my wife had no interest in going, so we kind of did our own, she went to the beach, I went to LA, and it was fine. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I kind of fall in the same boat here, but I think that my wife and we just kind of looked at each other one day and said it without saying it, that we're just better at taking vacations separately. So here's the thing you need to realize, too, is that, your wife is a teacher.
She is.
My wife is a teacher.
Indeed.
So if there is a trip that I say go overseas for, if it doesn't fall within the time that she is on break, she can't go. Because a lot of times where I have taken vacation, air quotes, has been for speaking engagements overseas. The last few years I've taken pretty, I'll call them extravagant trips overseas. And they tend to happen either kind of early to late fall or in the spring, and they're just not at times of the year where if she could go, you know, she probably would want to go if it was just the two of us. But I've taken friends and traveled with friends, and she likes traveling with just the two of us, kind of a small group, our own pace type of thing, which I totally get. But a lot of times when I plan these things, they're just not at the time of year she can go. But that's not to say that we haven't been on vacations together. I will say that the family trips we have taken, she loves Disneyland, and I can maybe do that once a decade.
Got it. Yeah.
And nothing against it, but I'll never forget. We were sorry, Mandy. We were dating, and we had gone to our first vacation together. This is, I think, even before we were engaged, and we went to Disney because her family is Vacation Club members. Okay. So we were able to take a vacation down there, just the two of us. We flew down. We didn't rent a car. We just basically took an airport shuttle, and we went to the place. And I'll never forget. We got there kind of late afternoon, and we got to the room, and I'm like, hey, we should probably hit up the pool. She's like, that's a great idea. I basically just plopped down my suitcase, whipped out a pair of shorts, changed, and went to the pool. She's like, well, I'll be right down because I have to get out my bathing suit and unpack a little bit. So I went down to the pool, which was like one of those little community pools in a cluster of like condos and things. And I was sitting there, and she came down, and we hung at the pool for like 45 minutes or an hour. And then she says, all right, well, what do you want to do now? And I said, well, I'm doing it. And because, you know, she likes to keep moving. She likes to see things, do things, not necessarily keep a schedule, but just keep moving. And I am a very, very laid back person on vacation. Yeah. You know, I'm fine. Like my usual vacations for the week, when I go anywhere, like I guess domestically, is usually like the Myrtle Beach or somewhere in North Carolina type thing where, you know, you spend the morning at the beach until the sun gets too hot, and then you retreat to the pool, and then you retreat to the condo or where you're staying, and then kind of hang out and cool off a little bit, maybe play a board game or just watch some TV, then go to dinner and come back and play a board game. Like that to me is the best vacation I could possibly have because there's like no set agenda. If somebody wants to go do something like play miniature golf, like that might be the extent of my planning. Like that is it. I don't take a lot of clothes. I might shower twice the whole time I'm there because I'll just take a bath in the ocean. You know, that to me is the perfect vacation. And she likes to keep moving. She likes to do stuff, see stuff, go out to lunch, go out to dinner and things like that. And please understand, I'm not begrudging any of that. It's just that I think as adults we're different.
Yeah.
You know, and that's okay. Now, I will say that eventually, because we've been promising to do it like forever, is we're going to take a trip overseas together. And we will do that eventually. It's just a question of timing. And again, it has to be during the summer, which is like the busiest time to travel. So it's just hard to plan. It's just a hard thing to plan.
Now, what I have grown as an adult to really appreciate, like, so, you know, I have a wife, I have 2 kids. There is always something going on in this house all the time. And on the occasions where my wife takes the children on vacation, my favorite thing to do is take a couple days off of work and just be home by myself with the dogs in silence. I can do whatever I want to do.
Yes.
And nobody else is in the house. And I love those like handful of days that I steal when I'm just by myself. I can watch whatever television I want. I don't have to wear pants. I can hang out with the dogs. I can play video games until like my eyes are watering and dry. Yeah.
So I didn't take a vacation this year. When I left my last job, I had some banked vacation time that I'm sure I would have used had I stayed. But I basically took a fat check with that. And then when I started at my new job, it was starting at a bank of 0. And I'll be honest, I'm kind of regretting that decision. I wish I would have taken some dedicated time off this year because it's been pretty busy. Like I had a week of downtime before leaving my old job and starting my new one. But I didn't get paid for it. It was just a matter of timing and, you know, wrapping up things at the old job and starting a new one. But I think if I could do it all over again, I probably would have used some of my vacation on the way out the door just to relax a little bit because, man, it's starting to get pretty busy at my job. And this week especially because I've been traveling. But it would have been nice to have some time because I know that I'm probably not going to get to take any time till probably November or December, right? Because that's when my birthday falls and Christmas and everything. And I have built up some time to use so far. It's one of those deals where you kind of bank up time as time goes on.
Right.
So it wasn't like I came in the door with 14 vacation days. No, it doesn't work that way. And I can cap out by earning some time, but it's going to take me a little while to build up my balance again. And I'm kind of regretting that because I could definitely use, and to your point, I really like just chilling out at home.
Yeah.
I totally do. Like just laying on the couch with my dog, just throwing on YouTube or something, surfing my phone, just chilling the F out. Like that to me is a perfect use of my time.
Yeah, I love it. It's all my stuff is here. I can be as relaxed as I want to be. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
The good old staycation.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to tolerance. So I was listening to a recent episode of Reconcilable Differences with two of our favorite people, Merlin Mann and John Siracusa. And I think John Siracusa said it best is, do you want to be miserable at the beach or miserable at home if you take a vacation, right? And it's just a matter of – and sometimes you have to take the whole family picture ahead of it. So, not having kids, it's probably a different story than someone like you that has kids or someone else that has a family where you do a family vacation. Because, when I was younger, I wasn't a huge fan of going on vacation. I liked it. But now that I've been older, I've discovered that it was also about making memories, right? Going to the beach as a family, right? Like there's something to be said for that too. I think it just depends on your situation. Like I think if you sat down and said, hey, look, I'm just not really feeling this. Like maybe, I'll buy your plane tickets or I'll pay for your gas, take the good car. I don't care, get out of town for a while. And I think, to be fair, I think people do this without realizing it. Like if your wife or whatever takes the kids / cats / dogs and goes visit their parents and you're kind of home alone, like that happens too.
Yep.
Take advantage of that. Like you could basically say that's already happening depending on your outlook. So hopefully that answers your question, Gary. I think it just comes down to, if your partner realizes that you're not necessarily happy, maybe they call it out, or maybe it's on you to say, hey, listen, I'm just not feeling it. You guys go have fun. And maybe that goes over well, maybe it doesn't. And, there's absolutely no advice that I can give you that's going to make that any better.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So last episode, I also teased talking about my new fetish, which is car washing.
Car washing, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Paul, before I get into this, how do you wash your cars?
Infrequently, and I just go to an automated car wash place that's relatively close to where I live and pay the $12 and let my car get dragged through the machine. Yeah, but really, I don't do it enough. I probably should wash my car more, but yeah. So I am not a car washer. Now,
is that a function of it takes too long, or laziness, or you live close to a car wash? Help me understand.
It's mostly apathy and laziness.
Okay.
Yeah.
Totally acceptable.
Yep.
Totally acceptable. So I have always enjoyed washing my car.
Okay. I don't understand that one bit, so explain it to me.
Well, I think there's just something for keeping your car relatively clean. And I've been spoiled a little bit again, not trying to flex here, but the expensive car I bought was from a dealership that is literally a quarter mile from my house. So if my car needs a quick washing, I can just zip over it and be like, hey, wash my car. And they're like, yes, sir, Mr. Virgwell, you got it. And they do it. And I've done that. But when my car needs a really, really good cleaning, I will do it myself. And for years, I wouldn't say that I've done the minimum, right? I've bought good car shampoo and I bought good sponges and good glass cleaner and some wax, and I will go to town. Just because, owning white cars, they don't necessarily show dirt, but when they do show dirt, they show a lot of dirt. Like,
that is
for
true.
Example, so I was on the road a lot this week. I think it's if I mentioned, and my car is a bug graveyard right now. The entire front of my car is almost a different color because I drove through like the armpits of several states to get to where I was going. And, when there's no lights, there's just bugs flying around and you smash through them at 95 miles an hour, and they explode on your windshield, on your bumper, on your roof, on your mirrors. Like, my car is just disgusting. So on the agenda for tomorrow, I'm going to get out there and give it a good old wash. And I like it. I will spend about an hour and a half to 2 hours doing it. Yeah. So the reason I wanted to bring this up is I've recently upped my game in the car washing department.
Okay.
So I work with a new person who is a car person, and they like having nice cars, but they also keep their cars immaculate. So he has a very, very fast SUV, and he keeps it immaculately clean. And it's not in the context of like, wow, that's weird. It's just that he takes a lot of pride in keeping his car nice and clean. And when I met him for the first time and went over to his home, I commented on, like, your car's, wow, it's really clean. And he introduced me to a whole car washing culture, right, that has kind of really helped me up my game in terms of car washing. So the first thing you need to understand, Paul, is if you're jumping into a hobby, you can do kind of what your friends do. Maybe, you'll say to me, Drew, how do you wash your car? And I would give you some tips. But if you really want to jump into any culture these days, you know where you go, right?
Reddit.
Reddit, right? You can go as deep as you want. So
right.
Kind of the darling of car washing is this company called Adams Polishes. So we will drop a link in the show notes, but if you want to head over there right now, it's just adamspolishes.com. Yeah. This website solely exists to get you pretty much every car cleaning product or accessory that you could ever need. Whether that is just, I want to keep my car pretty clean, or you're a professional detailer, like up to that. And
yeah, there's a lot of stuff on this website.
There's a lot of stuff on this website. There's exterior care, interior care, ceramics. I could talk for hours about ceramics and how I'm not there yet, but I probably will get there. But also a lot of cool accessories. So let me frame this for you. So when I would wash my car, I don't know, 6 months ago, I'd get a bucket, I'd hose it out, make sure there's no debris in it. I would, wash the chamois that I would use to wash the car, and it had like really soft things, like soft bristles on one side, and then kind of like a soft fabric cheese grater thing on the other side for removing bugs. For many years, I just used dish soap because dish soap was really good car wash, but then I invested in relatively what I consider to be decent car shampoo. I had wheel cleaner. I had separate rags and stuff to clean my wheels because a lot of the cars I've owned had like really narrow spokes on the wheels that collect a lot of brake dust. So I would have a special rag that I would wipe all that out, and I would stain my driveway different colors because of the hazardous, terrible materials that were in my wheel cleaner. I had really good glass cleaner. I would Rain-X my glass. I had interior cleaner, but a lot of times I kind of subcontract my interior work out because I have a friend. We'll drop a link to his. If you live in the Columbus area, I can't recommend him enough. Striker Auto Detailing. I'm going to drop a link in the show notes to him. He does a really good job on doing the interior of the car. He's got like a steam cleaner. He can keep it beautiful. Anyway, but I come to find out that I am like such a pleb when it comes to washing cars. And of course, right, this is a great opportunity to talk about car washing gear. So the big thing about Adams Polishes is the big thing they push is what they call their 2-bucket wash system. There's a lot of pictures on this website of people holding 2 buckets because it's in reference to the 2-bucket system. So here's the way it works, Paul.
Okay.
When you order these special buckets from Adams Polishes, there are these big buckets, big gallon buckets, huge buckets. But the premise here is that each bucket has a plastic insert that you set in the bottom. And the idea is this, is that when you're getting ready to wash your car, you fill one bucket up with just clean water. And then in the other bucket, you put a little bit of soap and some water in. And in the first bucket that has the clean water, you drop one of these inserts, which are kind of rough. And what you do is when you put the utensil that you're going to wash your car with into the bucket, you kind of, rub it against the bottom to get any debris off of your car washing implement or your mitt or whatever you're using. You go in there and you kind of rub it against there to get any debris off it. And then you take it out of there after you get all the gunk out of the rag. And then you put it in the bucket with the soap, get it nice and sudsy, and then go over your car with it. And I know that sounds like such a simple idea, but I mean, think about it. If you're using one bucket to wash your car, you're keeping the dirt with your with your car shampoo, soap, whatever. And I get it, like that, those buckets are both going to be dirty here. But by and large, it keeps the water relatively clean as you do sections of your car. And, you know, these guys, this company, I should say, makes really, really nice shampoo that doesn't streak, that doesn't leave residue. The same thing goes for their glass cleaner. Oh my God, their glass cleaner. Have you ever tried to clean the inside of your windshield?
Yes, it is. It is difficult, and B, I've always found that the cleaners I've used kind of leaves a film.
Well, yeah. Part of that is from people who know these things. Part of that is that whenever you buy a new car, your dashboard is treated in formaldehyde most of the time, or some other bad for you stuff. And as you drive your car and sun beats down on your dash, that stuff breaks down and kind of just like steams up onto your windshield. So that's why you kind of get that gunk.
Right.
Plus your sneezes, your humanness.
Humans are gross.
And
yeah.
Your defrost is blowing on it. Like that just kind of congeals on the bottom part of your windshield. The problem is that if you take any type of cleaner and you try to wipe that and you're not thorough, it's streak city. It looks gross. So there's a lot of different ways. I had grandparents that would swear by using newspaper on the inside of on your windshields, and it kind of worked. That's weird. I'm not advocating that. Please don't do that. Not in this day and age. Probably because you can't find a newspaper. But Adams Polishes makes really good interior glass cleaner and exterior glass cleaner. And as you can imagine, like if you want to spend $500 on stuff to wash your car, boy, is this the website to go? So under advisement from my new coworker, he kind of coached me on the stuff I should probably buy just getting into this, and it's been very good so far. Very, very good results so far. So I bought car shampoo, and I also bought an attachment for my hose that is a foam gun. So instead of rinsing the car off first and then hitting it with some shampoo, you kind of give the car a quick rinse, and then you hook this little you put some really, really sudsy soap in this little sprayer that attaches to your hose, and then it basically shoots shampoo onto your car. It is one of the most satisfying things I've ever done outdoors. It really gives a nice even coat for shampoo on your car. They also sell really high quality microfiber towels, microfiber cloths. I bought some glass treatment stuff. So what I will call, if I'm going to call Rain-X consumer kind of glass sealant to keep rain off your windshield, I'm going to call this stuff the prosumer stuff, because you actually have to apply it from a little like applicator, and then you have to basically use a clay mitt to clean your windshield, and then you kind of like stroke this stuff on, and it puts a nice even finish on there. Leaves the car looking really, really good. And then if you have a really fancy car that you don't want to risk scratching, you can use waterless car wash. They sell that, which I didn't know was a thing. Specialized wheel cleaner. If you want to clean your engine bay, they sell engine bay cleaner, like, rotary, reciprocating, polishers and things like that for putting on wax. This is a great place to go. So anyway, this is basically an excuse to say that I spent a lot of money on car washing implements, and, I don't consider it a waste of money. I think that my car is infinitely better on the outside with the time and effort. And I clocked it. I did my first wash a few weeks ago when I got into this. And it took me about 2.5 hours just to do the exterior of my car. But that was all in wash and sealing the windows and cleaning, really good wheel cleaning and some other stuff. And like I did the thing where, I gave it a good wash, and then I pulled it into the garage to do the windows, because you can't apply some of the stuff in direct sunlight. If you're willing to put the work in,
wow,
Adams will sell you pretty much, and I know there's other companies that do this too. Feel free to send us links. I probably will ignore them because I really like Adams. But, it's one of those things where you don't think you could spend a lot of money on washing your car. Oh boy, could you? And, if you go through, and the one thing that's really interesting, and I don't know enough about it to speak intelligently, but you can basically ceramic coat your car, which is kind of like waxing 2.0. Which is pretty crazy.
Now, what is? Explain that to me. I don't.
What do you mean?
Yeah. What do you mean? Like it's ceramic your car? Like, what does that do?
Well, let me see. How do I? well, let's see here. How do I even?
Because I'm looking at the page, and it's just a bunch of bottles and rags, and this guy wearing a white glove. I'm very confused.
Well, okay. Here's one way to think of it. So when you buy a new car,
Okay.
you get whenever your car is manufactured, they paint your car,
Right.
but then they put on what's called like a clear coat, which protects your paint, right? So from scratches, from road debris, from pitting, stuff like that. And what ceramic coating does is it adds kind of another layer of protection on top of your clear coat. That's the easiest. That's probably the best way that I can describe it. So what happens is over time, your clear coat and your paint kind of breaks down and it becomes like pitted. What ceramic coating does is kind of fill in those gaps. So it can also help protect if your paint's starting to break down over, years of use or whatever. And you don't need a lot of it. But the other nice thing about ceramics is it makes your car look really, really shiny. I mean, it makes your car look bright. It kind of gives it that really, really high gloss finish. And on a metallic painted car, it looks really bright, but where it really pops is on like a matte colored car because it really helps kind of show you that flat surface of the car, the flat surface of the paint. It makes it really pop. And it's really good. I think that most people apply wax to their cars once a year. Usually, I think most people will wax their cars right before the winter to try to keep some salt off the car, and ceramics can help with that too. But it's one of those things. It's another thing you have to kind of keep up with if you decide to do it. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of probably not great chemicals for yourself and your body. But if you're willing, it's one of those things. Listen, if you're willing to put in the time, you can make your car look amazing with it. So, yeah, so that's where I'm at. I have a lot of bugs to clean off my car tomorrow. I'm probably going to get out there pretty early before the sun gets up tomorrow, as long as it doesn't rain, and I don't know if it's supposed to or not. But I'm going to get out there and try to get that cleaned up. And I'll do my 2-bucket wash. It's going to be great.
Wow. I'm glad that like any hobby, like I'm glad there are people who really get into something. I'm a gear nerd. I love new things. So like, while I don't think I'll ever get into car washing, I'm enjoying just browsing this website and seeing the glamour shots of all these sprays and rags, and yeah. And it sounds like you really enjoy this. So I'm very happy for you.
I don't do it enough. I give my car a good washing every 2 or 3 weeks. And obviously it depends on use too. Like obviously, there's no way I could live with myself with my car in the shape it's in right now. And the only reason I didn't wash it today and it would have been a great day to do it because it was hot but cloudy. It would have been a great day to wash my car, but I was so exhausted when I got off the road. Then I just pulled my car in the garage and took a nap. Like that was it. Because I'd have been in no way, shape, or form ready to do this podcast tonight, or do anything or go to dinner or anything had I not. So, yeah, that's good. Yeah, I enjoy. I wouldn't say that I'm like washing my car every day because I think that's wasteful. I wouldn't even say if I do it once a week. I think it's totally situational, but I try to wash my car well once a month. Let's put it that way.
Excellent.
Yeah. Okay. So to kind of steer the podcast in a different direction here, before we kind of veer into, I think, probably what is going to be the main topic of the rest of the podcast, Paul, I recently had to take a work personality assessment. You ever done one of these?
Yes, I have done one of these.
All right. Which ones have you done?
I have only done Strengths Finders.
So talk about Strength Finders, because I've done it too.
Yeah, so I could not find my list of strengths, but from what I remember correctly is like I had a manager who was very, I don't know, touchy-feely kind of person, and so the whole team kind of went through Strength Finders. And if what I remember correctly, there was a series of questions that we all asked, and I don't know, through some sort of math, it broke down your top 5 strengths. And I think I was looking at it, there are 34 possible strengths you can be. And out of this, you get your 5 strengths to kind of give you an idea for, I'm not going to say who you are, because that's a whole nother topic. But it's kind of the you that you present to the world in a way.
Yeah, that's a really good way to say it. It's basically bringing awareness to yourself. And I did Strength Finders probably 12 years ago. I did strength finders at my first big boy job
Okay.
When I was out of school, because it was kind of the rage at the time, and my boss wanted me to do it, and I actually enjoyed doing it because I thought that the results were pretty on the nose for me.
Yeah. But
the whole idea is basically seeing yourself as others see you. That's kind of the main thrust of strength finders. And listen, before we go any further, I need to say that I think that these tools are only useful if you think you're getting something out of them. I don't think anybody should ever be managed to these things. I'm not saying anybody should be basically like pigeonholed as, wow, they took this test and they got these strengths, so I'm going to totally disregard them for some things. I think it's just a tool you can use to evaluate yourself and just kind of get a sense for, wow, I didn't really think that of myself. And I think it's really easy to look at some results and be like, that's not me at all. I'm not going to take that advice. And I think that's also pretty dangerous because maybe that happens once, okay, but if you keep taking these things and you keep disagreeing, is that a problem with you or the test? I don't know. But
right.
So I think it's just a self-awareness thing. So Strength Finders is a good one. And like I said, I too took Strength Finders and I tried to find my strengths. I think that I have them tucked away on a disk drive somewhere that I cannot find at the moment. So I don't have
me either. Yeah.
But I remember taking mine and being like, yeah, I agree with that. Have you done any other ones?
I have not.
Okay, so I've done a few. So I've done Strength Finders, and then I was part of a local kind of Chamber of Commerce leadership group called Leadership Dublin, and we did a very similar one to Strength Finders, I think. No, I take that back. It was more similar to a DISC assessment, but it wasn't a DISC assessment. And I can't remember what it was called. And I remember that it was a really weird scale. It was really hard to read, but I remember taking it and thinking, yeah, that's kind of me. But I just recently had to take another one for work, and I took a DISC assessment. You've never done a DISC assessment?
I've never done a DISC assessment. Assessment. Woo, that's hard to say. Woo.
There you go. So a DISC assessment is an abbreviation. It is it's just about learning how to relate to yourself and how other people can relate to you. And it's a tool for understanding yourself. And we had to take this as part of a work function that we were doing. And it was the first time I had ever taken a DISC assessment to my knowledge. And it pretty much crushed me. It pretty much nailed me spot on, I think.
Wow.
So DISC assessments it's a 4-letter word. DISC stands for dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness. And it's a series of tests or a series of questions, rapid fire. There are no wrong answers. And at the end, the questions kind of funnel down, and you have to like rank the answers type of thing. And then it spits out either single letter or double letter code for what you are. So you could be one of the letters. You could also be a blend of letters. And I took mine, and I ended up being a CD. So if you look at a circle when you were divided into quarters, so you have D in the upper left, I in the upper right, S in the lower right, and C in the lower left. I'm in the C quadrant, but I'm like shaded right outside of D. So I have some dominance and mostly conscientiousness. Like it basically put me into the C instead of the D. And then depending on how close you are to the center or the edge, there's some other things that can go into that as well. So here's the summary paragraph, and you let me know if any of this doesn't sound like me, because I think it sounds like me. Because you have a CD style, Drew, you probably take an efficient, no-nonsense approach to your work. You're likely to have high expectations for yourself and others. Since you value expertise, people who consistently demonstrate competence are most likely to gain your respect. And because you want to reach superior results efficiently, you work to balance speed and quality. You may be drawn to positions that give you the freedom to ensure that things are done correctly.
Okay, that sounds
That's pretty me.
That's
right?
pretty accurate. Yeah.
It's pretty darn accurate. Here, I'll keep going. Because of your desire to control outcomes, you may sometimes struggle to share responsibility and can be difficult for you to depend too heavily on others. I don't necessarily agree on the first part, but I definitely agree on the second part of that statement. I felt that I could definitely work pretty good as a team. I'm fine with divvying up responsibilities, but if I sense anybody ever slacking on a team, I absolutely go bat-ass crazy.
Right.
You probably avoid disorganized people or unnecessary meetings. Oh, boy. At times, you may even be tempted to just take charge of projects and finish them your own way. Yep, been there, done that. Like others with the CD style, you often avoid showing too much emotion. I would say that that's probably 85% accurate because I have let my emotions, for reasons that we've talked about in one very specific episode, get the better of me. So I don't know if that's entirely accurate. Sometimes I have let my emotions govern some of me, but I would say that's probably right. I like to try to remain even keeled through some things. In fact, you may come across as somewhat restrained and difficult to read when you first meet someone. Perhaps you're simply sizing up the situation, but your reserve may seem unfriendly to people who are more outgoing. What do you think of that statement?
That's so difficult because it's such a generalization. Like, yeah, that's probably mostly true, but like, I don't know. What do you feel about that?
I don't think that I'm standoffish. I just think that someone once a long time ago gave me the advice of mouth shut, ears open. So if I'm in a situation where maybe I don't know a lot of people or I'm new, I tend to hang back and I just like to take things in. And I think people might take it as being standoffish, but it's just me kind of sizing up the situation. Like I just want to get a feel. I like to read a room. You know, I like to know how things are going. Like if you look at the last job that you and I worked at, like it took me a good probably 6 to 8 months to really get comfortable there. And once I did, I thought I was pretty approachable in the extreme. Like I would host board game stuff and video game stuff and thought I was a pretty outgoing guy.
Yeah, very social. Yes, very social.
Yeah. So that's a weird one to me, but I'll take it as a genuine finding. You're probably not afraid to be straightforward or even blunt with your opinions because you're unwilling to compromise with what you see as the truth.
100% spot on.
Yep. I don't necessarily pull any punches, and I will make no apologies for that. And when things don't go as you think they should, you may struggle to contain your disapproval. Wow, there's the understatement of the century.
That's funny because reasons.
Yeah, reasons. Most likely you tend to project firmness and confidence in your ideas, and you may become a bit frustrated when others seem less decisive. Again, could not be more accurate with me. Just because, listen, and I'm going to say this with no malice, no misdirection. This is one of those things. It's going to get me in trouble when I say it, but I don't suffer fools. Like if you're dragging your feet or you're holding me back, I will absolutely hold you accountable. And I think people should.
Yeah.
Okay. You generally pride yourself on your ability to face challenges head on. When you set a goal, you're not easily swayed by obstacles or disapproval from others. At times, you may get so immersed in a task that others may wonder if you're irritated with them. You don't need to wonder if I'm irritated with you. There's probably a better than average chance. Because you tend to be skeptical, you may foresee problems that others miss. Likewise, you often pride yourself on your ability to separate your emotions from the facts. I don't know. But because you tend to focus on problems, you sometimes come across as dissatisfied. Others may find this intimidating, and they may be less likely to suggest new ideas to you or for fear of rejection. Which is nutty because fear of rejection is like my number 1 or 2 fear in life.
Yeah, you know what? I think I suffer from a little bit of the same kind of thing. Is I'm so focused on like the problem and like that's something I deal with all the time. Is if I hear something and it's like a problem, my brain just automatically turns on to solve the problem mode. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's not the most appropriate thing for a situation. Sometimes a person is just, complaining or venting, or they're looking for more understanding and not for my help. But my brain just clicks on like, let's solve the problem. Let's solve it now. Yeah.
Right. Like others with the CD style, you probably don't enjoy conflict, but you're unlikely to let it stop you from doing what you think is right. I agree with that.
Yep.
You may have a bit of a stubborn streak, and when someone challenges you, you may dig in your heels even further. I don't necessarily agree with that statement because I like to think that I can turn my eyes into myself because a lot of times I will question things that I suggest or things that I say. I don't know. What do you think? You tell me. What do you think about that? You worked with me for 6 years. Let's get that on.
Yeah, I did. I can see both sides of this. You are when you think you have the solution to the problem, you are very outwardly very confident like I have solved this. We need to do it my way. But I've also seen you, like, you think you have a good solution and you present it, and then you just question yourself, and you're constantly thinking, is this the right, like, it's not a bad thing. I think you're just constantly trying to think of, well, did I come to the right conclusion? Is there a better way to do this? You're very self-analytical. I think you're constantly looking for ways to improve yourself or improve the solution you have to a problem. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
It does. It does.
Yeah. Like, good enough is never good enough, right? It's always like continuous improvement and, honing and iterating, getting to the right solution.
When situations escalate, you sometimes overlook social niceties or let your tone or body language express your disapproval. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I won't hide that fact. Okay. Although you pride yourself on the quality of your work, you usually avoid public recognition. If you receive praise that seems overly emotional, you may suspect its validity.
I don't know. That's tough. That's something that's very internal to a person. It's not something you really present outwardly. It's how you respond to praise.
Do you ever think I was a glory hog?
No, no, okay. Never.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't think so either. And even when I would win awards or get recognition for things, I tend to downplay it just because I have the mantra of act like you've been there before, right? Like I don't want to walk around. There were definitely times where I climbed certain mountains in my career that I was proud of, and I would not hold back and saying, yeah, I think that's pretty cool. I think I did really good there. But in terms of like, wow, yeah, hey, Drew, you did good on this one project. I'd be like, all right, thanks. That's enough. Because like Don Draper says, that's what the money for. That's what the money's for, right?
Right.
Like, yeah, that's all I need to say about that. And because you think that others share this preference, it may not occur to you that your coworkers may want more open praise or compliments from you. Do you think I was ever shy holding back praise?
Okay, so this one is difficult for me. Early on in my career, I kind of took this weird, like, management personality. Like, it wasn't quite this. It was something very different. But one of the things I learned about myself is I am very bad at rewards. I don't need to be told I'm doing a good job. I don't care about that. I don't need other people to give me validation. And I'm also very bad about telling other people they're doing a good job. So I have these blinders to this particular problem, right? I just don't pay attention. And when someone is giving praise to someone else, I kind of just like, nah, and just turn off. So this is a personal set of blinders that I have. Yeah. So I don't know.
Okay. And then finally here, Drew, like others with the CD style, your most valuable contributions to the workplace may include your problem-solving skills, your high standards, and your determination. In fact, these are probably some of the qualities that others most admire about you.
Spot on.
Okay. And then the rest of this document, so it gives you a whole report on your thing. Let's see here.
I think I need to take one of these.
I think you should. So, to break down the different parts of DISC, so there's dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness. So I fell into the CD category,
right,
which is like more of a blend. I wasn't right on the line of C and D. I was in the C zone instead of the D zone. So D is dominance, and the priorities are like getting immediate results, taking action, challenging self and others, which I think is what a lot of my stuff came down to. Motivated by power and authority, competition, winning success, fears, loss of control, being taken advantage of, and vulnerability. You notice in other people self-confidence, directness, forcefulness, risk-taking, and your limitations are a lack of concern for others, impatience, and insensitivity. Then you have influence, which is priorities are expressing enthusiasm, taking action, encouraging collaboration. You're motivated by recognition, especially social recognition. You like group activities, you like relationships. You fear being a social outcast. You notice charm and enthusiasm and optimism in people. And your limitations are impulsiveness and disorganization, lack of following through, right? And then you have steadiness, which is, you're there to give support, lifting up others type of stuff. You're motivated by stable environments and like steadiness. You fear that same loss of stability. You fear change, and you are really worried about annoying other people. You notice patience in people. You notice good listeners. You notice humility, and you're limited by being overly accommodating, basically, and avoiding change, and basically being indecisive. And then you have conscientiousness, which is what I fell most into, and that is ensuring accuracy, maintaining stability, and challenging assumptions. You're motivated by your opportunities to use your expertise or to learn new things. You fear criticism. You fear slipshod methods, and you definitely fear being wrong. You notice precision, analysis, skepticism, and when people are quiet or reserved. And you're limited because you can be overly critical, tendency to overanalyze and to isolate yourself. So that's what those different letters stand for, and you fall somewhere on that spectrum with this test. Okay. And and here's the cool thing, and all of these things do this, right? Like it basically tells you like, hey, here's what you are. And then like the second half of these assessments are usually like, hey, here's how you can interact with people that are different styles. Like, here's what to look for. Here's how you can approach people that you recognize as being, straight up D's, right? Do this, don't do this. If things get tense, here's what you do. So I thought it was really good. And I had, like I said, I had to do this as part of like a work exercise. So yeah. And I've never had a manager manage me to one of these type of things. I think they're very open to it. I think it gives you insight into who you are. It gives your boss insight to who you are, especially if you're new to a team. Mm-hmm. But I think if people start managing through them, I think that can be problematic. I don't think I would appreciate that. Well, Drew, you were a D, and we need to get you more into the C, and that I would probably tune out on something like that. So
yeah. So how did you feel like getting this assessment and like seeing things that like clearly described how you kind of see yourself? Like, how did that make you feel?
Put it this way, I wasn't overly surprised by any of the results. Okay. There were a few of those sentences in there that stung a little bit, but that didn't mean I didn't agree with them. Okay. And everybody has a different personality, and all work is just school, but you're paid to be there. I mean, if you really think about it, right, it's working with your superiors, it's working with your classmates or your teammates to get things done, right? And if you are a manager or you're someone who's new to a team and you have a frame of reference as to how you come off without somebody having to tell you in a less than ideal situation about how you come off, I think that's a good thing. But at the same time, I don't think these tools should be used as a bludgeon to say, well, this thing set you aside as this type of personality, so I'm just going to chalk it up to that and let's carry on. And I think that kind of status quo-ness, I guess, for lack of a better term, is dangerous.
Right.
But I felt taking it and getting the results, I wasn't surprised. I think this is a pretty accurate portrayal of who I am. And there's a lot of people that don't put any stock in these things, and that's totally fine. I'm not advocating for these things, but yeah, I felt like it was pretty spot on, and especially like here's the interesting thing, right? And this is where I wanted to kind of end up with this conversation is, do you think if I take this, I don't know, 2 years from now, that these results are any different? Because here's the thing. I think if you look back at my last, 8 months at my previous job, I think that sums me up to a T. And there's still things in that list that I think I view as good things. Right. Like good, admirable qualities that make for a good worker. Yes, they can be challenging to certain personalities, but that's the point. There's no perfect personality, right? Had those results not come up, there would have been something else. Been like, wow, Drew, that's something you need to be conscious of. Of course, there's always going to be something to be conscious of, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what I'm curious is, right? Like, let's say I'm in my new role now for 2 or so years, and then I come back to something like this. Do you think my results are drastically different?
I mean, I think drastically different, not necessarily, but I don't think, especially with like personalities, like if it is something that you really, really strive and really work on, like if you just like, meh, that's me, and you go on through your life and you don't put any, intention into you, yeah, you take it in 2, 4, 6 years, it's probably going to be exactly the same. But I think these are things that can be improved and can be changed. And if you take the priority and take the effort to work on them, yeah, you absolutely can change yourself, right? Like it's not, it's that whole nature versus nurture thing. It's like, yeah, there's going to be some characteristics of you that are just fundamental. Like I can never see you not being passionate about things ever. That's just who you are.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the other things, like, yeah, like if you really wanted to work and change some of those things that kind of stung, then yeah, you absolutely could change those. And what do you think?
Well, okay. So I think I agree with like 99% of the stuff in that report.
Right.
But here's the thing. If I look back on some of those things that were challenging, right, or things that may, I don't want to say career limiting because that sounds bad, but things that can come across as harsh to people because,
Okay.
In full disclosure, that was feedback that I got towards the end of my time at my previous job before I left. And let me be clear, I left. I wasn't asked to leave, but I left. And one of the things that I got is that I was overly harsh to people. And that harshness came from a place of, I don't necessarily think I'm a mean person, but I have a certain standard of work that I want to uphold. And if people don't have that same standard of work, that's fine. But, when you turn me into a janitor instead of letting me be a professional, then I get a little upset. And that can only go on for so long before I pop. And especially in situations where like, hey, this could be better. And then you have a conversation like, yeah, we're going to be better. And then nothing changes. Like I completely check out. And that's when those, cantankerous, like body language things kind of pop out of me, because at that point, like I want to say that I get to that point when I've kind of given up.
Okay.
Like that's when I sort of shut down and be like, you know what, it doesn't really matter how well I do because it's not going to matter. And that is when I shut down. And that is something that, if I was going to take away from this, is like not to give up in those type of situations so easy. But when you're at a place for so long and you kind of see how things work and that it doesn't really matter how much you stomp your feet or express your displeasure, if things aren't going to change, like that only kind of is like a self-fulfilling prophecy for some of that stuff too. But yeah, I don't know.
And we both work in the technology space, and one of the things I've learned along my way in my, years of experience is like finding the solution to a technical problem is the easy part. The hard part for anything is people.
Mm-hmm.
People are soft and squishy, and they're full of emotions and biases and, their own concerns, and everyone comes to the table with their own set of problems and, goals. So really making big changes at an office place, the hard part is always people,
and
all the time. Yep.
And I totally agree with that. And I would say that I think the people that worked closest with me, most people that worked really close with me, knew how I did business. And I think in a weird way kind of enjoyed that because, I think there is some theater to watching somebody get so frustrated that their emotions kind of kick in, and then you basically make your impassioned plea for this could be better. And I think some people like that, but there are some people that don't. I get that. But I think that, if you were friendly with me or you worked with me on a day out basis, I think you would kind of come to see me for what I really am. Now, I can definitely see that if you didn't work with me a lot, or you constantly ran afoul of, causing me stress and agita and making my life difficult, yeah, I can totally see how I could come off as a totally big douchebag. Like I totally get that. Totally get that. But, as easy it is to say is, wow, I need to not do that as much. I would also probably argue that that's not my default mode. Like that is not where that is not a solid state how I operate. Like you kind of have to work a little bit to get me to be like that.
Yeah, I'm very similar. I have a funny feeling that when I take this test, you and I are going to be probably pretty close. Like, I'm not an angry guy. I try to be very easygoing and nice and bring humor to the situation, but like, and it's not even when someone makes a mistake, it's when they make the same mistake over and over again.
And that is one of my big things, right? Because
man, I will lose it. And
I did lose it frequently because it's one of those things where like you just see it not getting better, and it doesn't matter. Like at that point, it's almost like someone made the conscious decision to not fix the problem, and they're going to leave it to you to deal with. And it's like, well, what am I supposed to do about it? I'm a nobody. I'm a peon. I don't have any power in the situation. The best thing I can do is just continue to complain about it. Like I can't change it. Right? Because it doesn't matter if I change my viewpoint and then pat them on the head and say, well, you tried, it's okay. But like at the same time, like on fire, whoops, did a swear. And like you have to not only navigate the technical issue, you have to navigate this minefield of, well, I better be careful because I'm going to make them upset, even though this is like the 8th time they screwed this up.
Right.
I think there has to be like, I think it's okay to say, hey, it's okay to make mistakes, ... as long as you learn from them. And I saw at no particular place, I want to be clear, I saw a lot of mistakes happening and no one taking the time to learn from it.
Yeah, that can be frustrating.
Yeah, this would be very frustrating, especially as somebody like me with my style, my steez, right. My style and ease.
All right, I'm going to have to take one of these. I'm just going to have to spend a little bit of money and do this. So we could talk about it next week.
Expense it. I'm sure you could expense it. I'm sure if you presented it to your immediate superior and said, I want to take this thing, I'm pretty sure you get the corporate credit card to do that. And I don't know how much it costs. I really don't.
You know, looking online, I've seen it anywhere from like $30 to $70. So it's not that expensive.
Nah. I mean, you don't even need approval for that.
No.
You're a manager now. Can't you just ask for the corporate card?
I could. Yeah.
Nobody looks at those things. Okay. I think we got time for one more topic, and it's one that people have been asking about, and it's one that I didn't necessarily publicize, but I think that at least with the conversation that we just had, I think it comes with saying that, yeah, I did change jobs about 3 months ago, and I now work full time for Microsoft, which is one of those things where, and this is going to go to a weird place here in a minute, but yeah, I do work for Microsoft now. For those of you, for like the 2 people listening that didn't know that, I definitely work for Microsoft now in a field engineering capacity. So not so much a consultant, more of an advisor. I'm coming up on my 90 days at the company, and it's been pretty awesome so far. I think it's a great place to work. That's not me being a corporate drone. That's me legitimately saying, like, I see how things are starting to work and how things fit together and how things click and how they, treat their employees. And you know what? Pretty friggin' solid. And, my onboarding process has been pretty stable. It has been stressful at times. I was told that the first year can be a little hard, right? Because it is so new. It's a type of job that I've never done before. The technical aspects of it are not difficult so far. I expect that to change because some of the areas that I'm choosing to focus in my role are areas that I don't necessarily have a lot of experience in, because I am a premier field engineer in the data and AI space. And what that means is I work with all sorts of data, dash related technology, right? So that, of course, being a production DBA for so many years, that's SQL Server. So there's plenty of SQL Server work to be done, both in an on-premises situation with legacy stuff like migrations and performance tuning and things like that. And then, customers and people who are looking to move to the cloud and assisting them with that journey. But then there's also different sub areas to focus on too, like SQL Server on Linux is one that I'm spending a lot of time on. Containers, one I'm spending a lot of time on and trying to get more up to speed on because I come in with a little bit of experience in those areas. So there's a lot to learn and a lot to do. And some people have asked me, well, Drew, why'd you leave and how come you weren't more vocal about it? So 2 things. One, as a career growth opportunity, I sort of realized that I had gone as far as I was probably going to go in my last role, which is a big decision on me leaving. That's why I don't work with Paul anymore, and it's really sad.
Yeah. Full disclosure. Yeah. At the end of your career at your last job, you actually reported to me.
I did. So, through some management shuffles, Paul was promoted, and before we start like our own brand of QAnon, no, that's not why I left. It wasn't because Paul was promoted over me. No, I had no desire to be a people leader. None.
And in full disclosure, that was my first time being a people leader. So
yeah. And also full disclosure, I was his most difficult employee. So yeah, and that's not even close. No, but it was one of those things where I basically walked in one day and said, "What's in this for me for the next thing?" And I didn't like the answers I was getting, so I was like, you know what? I think it's probably time I move on. So I think the less we say about that, the better. But I decided to move on. I interviewed a few places. I was referred into Microsoft by a dear friend of mine, went through the process, got an offer. And when I weighed, it basically came down to Microsoft and one other place. And when you sat down and you make your pros and cons list, like it was a no-brainer. And not any ill will against the other offers I got. Had I not had the Microsoft offer, I definitely would have accepted one of them. But once I decided to take the Microsoft job, I just basically, it was Microsoft and everyone else was like a distant second. So it was a decision to leave for Microsoft as a career development / putting my expertise to use for a lot of different things. The role I'm in, I get to be an advisor and a teacher and the things that I like doing. I like solving technical problems, but I also like teaching people how to solve their own technical problems. I think that's something I'm really good at. And I really enjoy it.
Having worked with you for a long time, like that was the part of the job I think I was the most excited for you about. You are extremely talented in teaching and presenting complicated ideas in a simple way. And for you to like that be your job, sounds awesome.
Well, and it's part of my job. Let's put it that way. And again, since I'm not fully like up to speed yet, even though I'm coming up on 90 days, and believe me, it is changing rapidly. I'm hoping that I get the opportunity to do that more, whether it's, a customer that I have a longer term relationship with, or if it's somewhere I'm kind of just traveling around and doing that, that remains to be seen. And, the other half of this question is, why wasn't I a little more vocal about it? Well, again, it kind of goes back to that act like you've been there before thing. One very common thing is that when people kind of take that blue badge, they're very vocal about it. They're very proud about it. And it's not to say that I'm not. I'm very, very proud of where I work now. I think that it represents the culmination of a lot of years working with a lot of different pieces of technology and kind of going to work for, depending on the hour of the day, the most profitable company in the world.
Right.
There is an amount of prestige that goes along with that. But again, one of my default modes that I operate on is acting like I've been there before. And I wanted this to be just my next step. I wasn't looking to overly publicize it. I wasn't looking for people to say, "Hey, congrats," and a bunch of people patting me on the back. Like it's not what I wanted. Like I told the people that I cared about that I was leaving and where I was going, and everybody was happy for me, and that's all I really needed. And now that's where I work. Again, it kind of comes down to, how do I say this without sounding really, really bad? Let me preface this by saying this isn't a slight to anything or anybody, right? But it's just like, in order for me to continue to be challenged and in order for me to continue to grow, whether that is at a personal development level or a technical level or whatever, I think that this represents the best opportunity for me. I think that I'm going to get to play and do with lots of different things, things that I didn't necessarily get to do before. So I'm excited in that respect that the sky is literally the limit in my new role. There are so many different ways I can go, so many different things I can do, so many different things I can see and touch and help with and contribute to. There's a million different career paths inside of Microsoft. I mean, obviously I've only been there 90 days, so I can't go to my boss and be like, "Hey, so what's the next step?" But they encourage you to take an active approach to managing your career and where you want to go. And they give you lots of tools to help you figure out what that is. And I'm really excited for that as I continue to learn about Microsoft and the do's and don'ts and how things work. So I think there was an opportunity that I could not pass up. And, I think it's easy to get really comfortable in your role. And I definitely was comfortable. But if you're not willing to fail, if you're not willing to put yourself on the line to try something, to take a step and do something, then that's a kind of a fixed mindset, which is dangerous for a lot of reasons.
Right.
So, as scary as this is, and, I may be terrible at it, but I'd rather take my shot and miss than never be given a shot. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you go, if it's Microsoft or a new company or going out on your own. I think that you have to have the courage to stand up and say, I could do better. And, one of two things happen. You take that shot and you say, you know what, I am better, and it all works out. Or you take your shot and you find out, like, this is really hard. Maybe I wasn't as good as I thought, and it can be a humbling and a learning experience. But no matter what happens, they're all learning experiences.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there have been changes in my life since taking this role. I for years was a very, very active member of the SQL Server community.
Mm-hmm.
I was a regular blogger, regular speaker. I got to go to amazing places and talk about amazing things. I was recognized from Microsoft in forms of an MVP award. Like, I got to climb many, many good mountains. But once upon a time, somebody shared with me the greatest tragedy in life. And Paul, you know what the greatest tragedy in life is?
What is it, Drew?
It's getting exactly what you want. And because you get there and then it's like, well, now what? And I found myself at that crossroads increasingly asking myself, well, what next, what next, what next? And, one of the questions that came in the email was, what was your biggest career mistake? I think it's easy to point to times where, like, well, maybe I was harsh in this interaction, or maybe I could have studied this more or done this instead of what I do now. I think the biggest mistake that anybody they can make in their career is leaving their career up to somebody else. I think that you as an individual have to own your career. And I think that you have to know when it's time to move on or move to a different department or learn something new or totally shift gears. You have to be the one to step up to say, I want something more, or this isn't working. Because I promise you that if you do it on your terms, it's way better than the alternative. And, like I said, I just felt like I was kind of at the end of my rope in terms of opportunities and things that I wanted to do and things that I wanted to learn, that I had to make that decision to do it. And I'm blessed in the fact that I had people looking out for me. And thanks to my awesome network of contacts and relationships and networking throughout the years, that, they came to me, right? They came to me and said, hey, I think you'd be good for this. And that's extremely rewarding, because it's one thing to get a promotion at work. It's one thing to be recognized in your role at your job. Hey, Drew, we're going to give you a promotion. It's another thing altogether to have people that you've met throughout your life that maybe you've helped or you've helped them, they've helped you, coming to you and saying, hey, listen, I've got this opportunity and you're perfect for it. And it may not even be a promotion. It's just that knowing that people are actively out there looking for you,
right.
Laying the framework for you to make that decision. And at the end of the day, that's what it is. And it wouldn't matter if I went to a place like Microsoft or anywhere else. I think I would have basically approached this in the same way, is not necessarily being vocal about it, but the people I care about knowing my thought process. And I really labored over the decision at first. Because look, I was the guy in a lot of respects for some of the things I did, and there's comfort, right? And I'm not saying everybody's job is secure, because it's not, but it's at will employment. At any time, someone can say, hey, we don't need you anymore.
That is true.
That is true. And, it wouldn't matter where I went. I think I probably would have done it the same way. And I agonized over it. And I talked to people really, really close to me, who listened to me kind of whine and moan about the decision. And they let me vent. And they basically said, they all kind of gave me the same advice in different flavors. And it's at the end of the day, you have to think about what you could have versus what you have. And that's kind of the decision. That's kind of how I accepted it. And at Microsoft especially, they're very big on having a growth mindset. Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid of being wrong. Take it as an opportunity to grow.
Right.
Because if you're not willing to take those risks and you're not willing to see what you're capable of, you'll never know what that is. And that's how I'm kind of adopting this. And there's still a lot of parts of my job that are scary, and I'm still learning a lot. And it's a different type of job of any type of job I've ever had in my entire career. And it's really, really scary sometimes. It is stressful a little bit. but it's a good thing. Like, I'm not going to let it stress me out and me be miserable about it. It's just, okay, I know that it's there. It's a challenge. I have to rise to it, and I'm just going to do my best. So.
Yeah. And that's an excellent attitude. And it's like, to kind of, loop things back. I don't know, about 6 months ago, I had the opportunity to, up until that point in my career, I was very technical. I was like, like Drew, I was the guy in a lot of things at work. And I kind of had the opportunity to become the leader of the team I was on. And I took that opportunity, and it's been a challenge. It's been different. I've been flexing a lot of muscles that I haven't had to flex before at work. But at the end of the day, it's like, I'm really enjoying it because I am doing new things. I am learning new skills. I'm becoming a better person, a different person. And I kind of realized that I've kind of got a little stale with what I was doing.
And yeah, and I totally agree with that, because I found that I was getting stale. And like, if you look at some of the stuff that I was working on before I left, right, it was me trying to break out of that and do new things.
Yeah.
And I was doing it, but at the same time, like, it didn't feel like there was a way for me to take the next step with any of those things. And, I just had to basically have the presence of mind to say, you know what, like, maybe it is time I start looking. And, that's when these things kind of came to fruition. And the other thing that people have asked about is, Drew, are you still going to be able to do community stuff? Or are you still going to be able to talk on social media about things? And the answer is maybe.
Maybe.
Like, I was on the books for a lot of SQL Saturdays this summer that I just couldn't do. I had conflicts in my new role that basically totally changed my schedule around. Because, like I said earlier in the podcast, like, I didn't really take a vacation this summer. When I decided to switch jobs, I cashed out my vacation days and basically started into my new role. And there were certain expectations around getting certain things done within a certain period of time that didn't lend themselves well to taking off early on a Friday to drive to a SQL Saturday, or to fly overseas to Germany, right? Like, I really wanted to do those things. I was looking forward to doing those things. But those things don't put a roof over my head, right? I have to take care of number one first. And, these were things that I had to adjust. And everybody was super understanding about it. Nobody was mad about it. Like, all the engagements that I was lined up to do, understood, they got it, and they were fine with it. And I could not ask to be working with a more professional group of people in that regard, because they all got it. They're all resilient. They all rose to the challenge of making sure that my spot was filled, and they still had amazing events with or without me. And that's awesome. But I'm now starting to get to a point where things are definitely starting to, materialize in a regular workflow. And I'm hoping to get back to speaking. Like, I was just speaking this weekend. I've got another engagement coming up, after hours, I think next week or the week after. I got to look at the calendar.
It always takes like 3 to 6 months to really feel like you fit in your contributing to a new role. And like, you always think like, I'm going to take this job and I'm going to knock everything out of the park in 2 weeks. And that's just not how it works. Like, it takes time.
I'll be honest. Like, I don't think I'm going to be able to fully tell you how my job is going till about 8 to 12 months in. Like, I just don't think I'm going to have a good grasp on how I'm doing, the type of work I'm going to be doing, where I'm going, what I'm working on. I just don't think I'm going to know that for 8 months. And that isn't a result of Microsoft. That is just a result of, I think I'm going to need that much time to know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I just think I'm going to need that much time to take it in. And, listen, I'm hoping I can work for them as long as I can, because they like the long-term relationship with their employees and they value them. And I'm hoping that I can do it. And if I want to keep up my community contributions and my community speaking and stuff like that, but that's going to be on me, and that's going to be nights and weekends, just like it always was. I probably won't have the work flexibility for like expensing things and doing things like I did in my previous role, which may ultimately make me cut down on some of these things if they're not super local. But I'm hoping that I can keep them going. I really do. And then the other big thing people ask about is, well, what about social media? Can you be, critical of Microsoft, or can you talk about things at Microsoft? Are you NDA'd? And the answer to all those things is yes. within reason.
Got it.
Right? Like I'm not gonna badmouth Microsoft. I'm not gonna share anything that I shouldn't share. But at the same time, like, people are asking about, well, Drew, is it a good idea to share your thing about depression, or is it, good to share like your DISC assessment, or is it good to talk about stuff you're working on? And I think it's totally fine, right? I think that as long as people realize that it's me and it's not Microsoft talking about these things, like, I think that's the thing people need to realize, which is why I changed up my Twitter profile to be the ubiquitous, opinions mine, right? Like
right.
Sort of absolves me of all sins, right? But at the same time, if I get on and be like, SQL Server sucks and Oracle's awesome, like, I'm probably going to get a talking to, right? Like, I need to be conscious of that. And it kind of goes back to what I said at the beginning of the podcast, that if you send in questions that I can't answer, I won't answer them. I won't no comment it. I just won't talk about it.
Right.
And, so far I haven't talked about anything that has come back to bite me, but that's because we have like 12 listeners. But
hey, it's like 40 now. 40.
Okay. All right.
At least 40. At least.
Yeah. So to answer the main questions, yes, I work for Microsoft now. Yes, I'm still doing SQL Server related things for now. I'm hoping that I can continue to expand my skill set and help customers with other things in the cloud, especially not just SQL Server related. It has made me make big changes in my life. There's been a lot of adjustments, like working from home more and taking on a different type of advisory role versus a problem solver, project-based work type stuff. There is going to be a change to my social media and my sharing if it hasn't happened already. But yeah, so far I'm really enjoying it. I mean,
that's great.
Was there other stuff, Paul, that you were curious about that I haven't talked about with you specifically, or?
I mean, I had the advantage of kind of talking with you through this whole process. So I'm good. I answered all of my questions. I'm happy that you took this opportunity. I mean, granted, yeah, but would I like still be working with Drew? Yes, but end of the day, you kind of have to separate your work relationship with your personal relationships, and I think this change was really good for you. I think it's a role that you are going to succeed in. I'm proud of you. So that's what it comes down to.
Well, thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I got to take a lot of my friendships with me out the door.
Yep.
Right. Not every friendship remained intact. It didn't.
Nope. And it won't.
Nope. But put it this way, the people that I truly care about and the people that I'm really good friends with and still remain friends with and still have lunch with and still talk to on a regular basis, I'm thankful for. And I got to keep a lot of my friendships on the way out, and I'm very, very thankful for that. Yeah. And there are people that I still genuinely care about there.
Yeah. And like when you left, I had kind of the realization that, I enjoy you as a person, but I've kind of used work as a crutch for our friendship. And I was saying, like, I'm going to make sure that, I go the extra effort to make that, the friendship last. And the podcast was born.
Well, to be fair, we've been talking about doing a podcast for like a year.
We had, but yeah.
But that was the push we took to get this done.
Exactly.
So, yeah. If you have more questions about what I'm doing at Microsoft or whatever, I mean, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. I'll put the link at the end of the show and whatever. And if there's anything that you want to know specifically about my role, like maybe you're listening and you're considering a move to Microsoft, I can definitely try to answer questions that you may have, depending on what your role is. I mean, I can only speak to kind of what I'm doing or what I've learned so far, but I'm happy to share. Let's put it that way. So, but yeah, it's been good. It's been good. I'm really enjoying it so far. I really, truly am enjoying it so far. All right. Well, when we cap it there, I want to table the job changing discussion because, there are definitely things about changing jobs when you get to be a certain age, like AKA almost 40, that are way scarier than when you're changing jobs in your 20s.
Yep.
And I'll talk about that another time. But we've been talking for a while. Anything else you want to talk about?
Nope. I think this is a heck of a show.
Yeah. And I definitely want to put something on the agenda for next session to talk about Rob Sewell.
Okay.
I don't think you've ever met him, Paul. I know that I have people in my life here in the States that have met Rob, and they all love him. I know you would love him because I think you guys have a lot in common. But Rob, I love you, buddy. We're basically gonna have you as a topic next show. Awesome. And I I don't think we've really set up the ability to have guests on the podcast yet, but I'm going to maybe advocate for Rob to be our first guest if we ever do that.
I would love to have a guest on the show. Keep it fresh.
Yeah, no, totally. Like if one of us is on vacation or something.
Yeah, a guest host. Sold.
Sweet.
All right, Drew. Where can people find you on the internet?
Oh, Paul. Well, I am on the internet at Pittsburgh. That's Pittfurg. And where can people find you, Paul?
I'm on the Twitters at Paul Baylor. That's BAHLER. I know my own last name. You can find the podcast at Doing Best Pod on Twitter and doingtheirbest.com on the World Wide Web.
And we've gotten so much good feedback and a lot of good questions. I would say that probably 50% of this episode came from listener feedback. And
absolutely. Yeah.
It made for a definite good plan. I was ambitious with all the things that I put on the list for this episode.
It's okay.
But we will get to them. And I can definitely see that there's been more stuff that's come in, and I'm hoping that we can address them.
Yep.
But definitely, did we already give out the email address? I kind of blanked out there for a second.
No. You can email us at contact@doingtheirbest.com, or if you go there, you can find a contact form, fill it out online, hit the button. End of the day, it all comes into my inbox. Yeah. So like you said, we've had so many suggestions, so much great feedback and comments. It's truly humbling. I'm appreciative to everybody who gives us their time and listens to the show.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's good enough for now, Paul. As always, it's been a pleasure, and we'll see you guys next week.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks again.